A recent arrest of a Norwegian Cruise Line crew member really highlights a disturbing issue in cruising that the major cruise lines have to address. We're going to talk about that, plus everything else going on in cruising in today's episode. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to La Lido Loca. I am your host, Tony, here to talk to you about everything going on in cruising. And the first story is disturbing. It is disturbing and it's sad. And I'm gonna say be cautious if you have little ones in the room, because like I said, this isn't the best topic. But on April the 4th, a Norwegian Cruise Line crew member was arrested for possession of materials of youth that's not good. Abuse. Child abuse is a word that can be used in this scenario. I think you know what I'm talking about. And unfortunately, this isn't an isolated event. The records show that last year, 17 crew members across a bunch of different cruise lines, including Carnival and Royal and Disney and other major cruise lines, got arrested for the exact same thing. I don't know what cruise lines can do to fix this. There's, it's a microcosm of society. When you go on a cruise, you're on a cruise ship with thousands of people. And so the numbers just flesh out that you're going to run into people that are aggressive, that are willing to fight. You're going to run into people that are depressed. You're going to run into people that are happy. It's the whole swath of society. And unfortunately, that's the same thing for crew members. There's so many crew members on board. You're going to have some crew members that are sickos, that are monsters, that are people that are abusive toward minors. And honestly, I don't know what the cruise lines can do about it. So it's, there's probably 100,000 crew members, few 100,000 crew members or more. And so 17 people being caught, I guess that probably is not representative of everybody that has this, deal. But 17 is not the hugest of number, but when it comes to this kind of thing, one is more than too many. I guess, the reason I'm even talking about it, obviously, because we had this recent arrest on April the 4th, but it's just a reminder when you're out there on cruise ships with your family and with your kids, there's going to be other cruisers that look to do harm to your kids. And there's going to be, crew members that, given the opportunity, will do harm to your kids. So make sure when you go on a cruise ship that you kind of teach your kids to be on the lookout, see something, say something, teach them how to be situationally aware, keep an eye on your kids. Don't just let them run free. And just know that even though cruise ships are safe and they're enclosed environments, there's a bunch of people coming together, and not every person in the cruise community, crew member, cruise passenger, are good people. And it's so, it's disturbing. It's disturbing, but it's reality. What do you guys do to keep your kids safe on cruise ships? Leave a comment below. Okay, let's move from what's a fairly destructive conversation to a more constructive conversation, literally constructive. The city of Juno, very popular. It's the capital of Alaska, for goodness sakes. There's been some conversation whether there's too many cruise ships going to Juno. And well, this next story is weird in that context, because the assembly there just approved the plans for the construction of a fifth pier, a fifth dock there in the heart of Juno. It's going to be called Auk Landing. It was proposed by the Huna Totem Corporation, and they hope for it to be a year-round destination. So even when the cruise season isn't, going, they're going to build this dock area up to be a place that has restaurants and places of leisure, places of shopping, a full-on, destination there in the downtown area. The arguments for and against this thing prior to the vote were pretty wild. Somebody stood up and said, okay, now you're going to have a fifth dock. You're going to have another cruise ship poisoning the environment. And somebody else got up and said, well, we have 5 ships anyways. Right now, one of the ships just stays off into the water and they bring people in by tender, which I've tendered into Juno before. That's not a fun experience. And so the people that are for it are saying with the fifth dock, then it's going to make the situation better. Instead of having thousands of people disembark in 4 docks, then this other dock will spread the people out. Yeah, I don't know. It's always this conflict in these cities about whether they want cruise tourism or not want cruise tourism. But apparently, the assembly there have enough support for this new cruise dock in Juno. What I do know for certain is this conversation about over tourism and whether to have cruise passengers will continue to play out in cities all over the world. It's kind of fun to track along with it. What do you think? You ever been to Juno? You like that destination? Leave a comment below. This next story reminds me of one of my favorite Ludacris tunes, New Kid. Everybody's talking about that new kid. I don't wanna hear it, there is a new kid in town. I'm gonna tell you about that. And then I gotta tell you about some controversy going on between Carnival and Royal. We got Carnival straight up copying Royal, and then Royal kind of like, hey, look, I know you're doing a thing, but we already did it. That's interesting. But first, let's talk about the new kid. Norwegian Cruise Line's brand new cruise ship, the NCL Aqua, has made her debut in New York City. A city so nice they named it twice. Aqua, I was on one of her very first sailings from Lisbon in Portugal to Southampton in the UK. Then she just did a 10-day transatlantic from Southampton, and now she's on American soil, I guess. I mean, American water for the very first time. I loved that cruise ship. I had a great time. I did do a full ship tour. I'll leave that linked at the end. But yeah, congratulations, NCL Aqua, for making your way to the Big Apple. If you can make it there, you can make it anywhere, right? New York, New York. Shout out Ludacris. I'm going to tell you about this Carnival Royal controversy. But first, how about a dance break? Dance break. Get up. Get up. I like a dance break. Okay, now let's talk about the big juggernaut rivalry of cruising. Of course, we're talking about Carnival Cruise Line versus Royal Caribbean. They're like the Coke and Pepsi of cruising. They're like the White Castle and Crystal of cruising. They're like the Ginger and Marianne of cruising. They're like the Dale Earnhardt and Jeff Gordon of cruising. They're like the Alabama and Auburn of cruising. Royal versus Carnival. Carnival just came out earlier this week with a big hubbub announcement about Project Ace. I don't know if that means they got an ace of spades. Bum, 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 bum. The big ace in the hole for Carnival was Project Ace, and they announced that they're coming out with 230,000 gross ton cruise ships that hold 8,000 passengers. These are going to be some of the biggest cruise ships in the world. And that announcement came out, and Royal Caribbean sat back and said, hold my beer. Those are big cruise ships, certainly Carnival, but they still ain't going to be the world's largest cruise ship. Right now, Icon of the Seas, 258,000 gross tons. I think they can hold close to 9,000 passengers. So, yeah, I guess when it comes to the size conversation, Royal's going to be bigger. The size matter, is bigger better? I don't know, but I guess Royal's looking at Carnival going, I wouldn't start bragging about the size of your cruise ship. It's going to be your biggest cruise ship, but we already done that. And then interestingly, Royal has proven out a concept that not everybody's that fond of, but it must be successful enough because Carnival's straight up copying that concept. Do you remember when Utopia of the Seas was announced? And they announced it as a cruise ship that would be providing the best weekend ever at sea. They were going to be doing 3 and 4 day sailings. And people went, what the heck is going on? Royal Caribbean is going to take their brand new, newest cruise ship, their best hardware, and put it out there for 3 and 4 days. Nobody's going to like that. Except a lot of people like that. Booked up all of the time, getting a premium price. And it's going out every 3 and 4 days out of Port Canaveral. And people are dang excited. My theory about that at the time was this would be very appealing to new cruisers. I remember when I went on my first cruise, I didn't want to go on a 7-day cruise because I wasn't sure whether or not I would get seasick. And so we drove across the country just so that we could get on a 4-day cruise out of Mobile, Alabama. And we got on Carnival's oldest cruise ship, and the dang thing broke down on our very first. That was my first cruise experience, driving forever to get on a 4-day cruise that was broke in because I cruised, I chose the oldest cruise ship in the fleet because that was the one that was offering the 4-day cruise. And, that's the way a lot of cruise lines do it. And then Royal, the light bulb went on and said, well, why are we trying to stick new cruisers that want short cruises on old hardware? Let's put them on the best and the newest so you could get a good taste of what cruising was like and bring them back. Now, I got hooked either way. That's my personality. I'm like, oh, free entertainment, free food, free travel to foreign lands. And of course, I know it's not free. I can see some people's heads exploding out there. It's not free. You paid for it. Say included. Say included. Yes, included. But now, on the heels of that proving out to be a good strategy for Utopia, Carnival said, you know what? Maybe we should do that too. So in their big announcement the last couple of days, they said not only are they building new XL class cruise ships and that they've got Project Ace, but they're also going to take some of their newest hardware, the Carnival Mardi Gras, and they're going to make that do 3- and 4-day cruises out of Port Canaveral. So they're going to go head to head with Royal Caribbean on short cruises, on new hardware out of Port Canaveral. And, some old time cruisers, some of the faithful are like, we hate this. Why are you taking the new ships and putting them on a short cruise? If it works out for Carnival the same way that it worked out for Royal, it could be a really great decision. What do you think about short cruises on new hardware? Do you think it's a waste of the new hardware to just have short cruises? Or do you think it's a brilliant strategy? And do you think Carnival copied Royal? Carnival versus Royal, the rivalry goes on. It's just like, Chicago style pizza versus New York and all those other great rivalries. Thank you so much for checking out this episode today. Subscribe for more. This is Tony for La Lido Look. Until the next time, we'll see you on the Lido. Bye.